All right, everyone, we will get started. Good morning and welcome to Virtual Voices. I'm Elizabeth Pruch. I help to ensure all of our wonderful alumni stay engaged, no matter the circumstances we are facing. Virtual Voices is a series we developed in response to COVID-19 just to keep you all engaged and informed as our community works through these challenging times. And what we've done is we're asking alums who are on the front lines of impacted industries to share their knowledge, their perspectives, and their leadership lessons. And today we have a focus on small businesses. We have 4 small business owners from different backgrounds, different industries, and they'll share a little bit more about themselves here shortly. I want to talk just a little bit about the housekeeping for the call. On the call with me and managing the call is Megan Vivier. Say hi, Megan, wave. We couldn't do this without her. She will help with any technical issues that you might be having. So please do message her in the Zoom chat feature if you have any issues. We are recording this session this morning, so you can find this afterwards on our Leadership Foundation website if you want to see it or refer to it or send it to anybody else. We have muted everybody just to eliminate the background noise. We want to try to maintain the ability to hear our speakers, and we also recommend that you put your view on speaker view. So in the top right hand corner you'll see gallery view or speaker view. We do recommend speaker view as the listeners because whoever's speaking will then show up on that screen and it's a little easier to follow along. I will be managing the chat, I'll be managing all the question and answer through the chat function. So I recommend that you pull up your chat box and then you can kind of move it to the side of your screen. If you look at the bottom navigation bar, if it's not in the 3 dots under more, then it's right there, but just click on chat and that's where we will manage all Q&A. What we'll do is when it's time for questions, I will have you type your question or a partial question into the chat box and then I'll call on you one by one to ask your question. I do ask that you direct your question to a specific speaker since there are 4 of them today. It doesn't mean others can't chime in and answer, but please do direct your question to one person when you are called on. You're welcome to unmute yourself when it's time to chat. Please do remember to mute yourself again when you are done speaking. Megan will have the ability to mute and unmute you as well in case we hear some feedback or you maybe forget to mute yourself again. The chat room is visible to everybody if you have that open. This is a great place if you want to just give somebody a virtual high five or say, I'm so sorry, or well done, or appreciate what you're doing for us. You're welcome to put all of that in the chat function. This is how we have a virtual dialogue these days. But I will only be calling on folks that have questions. So I would love, and I'm honored to introduce our 4 speakers. I'm going to introduce each of them, and then I have an individual question. First will be Jessica. I'm going to ask her a question, and then I'd love the audience, if you guys have specific questions for Jessica, you're welcome to ask her a question, and then I'll introduce the next speaker. You can ask them a question. We want to interject questions throughout this, so it's more of a question and answer and dialogue throughout. We will have more time at the end of all their presentations to ask more questions, and I will fill in where needed with other questions. So if that all sounds good, please allow me to introduce Jessica Acosta. She is the founder and CEO of Environmental Consulting Services, a company that addresses the environmental compliance needs of private, federal, state, and local clients. She has more than 17 years of progressive experience in the construction industry. She is a proud LD15 alum, as am I, and one other speaker on this call who you'll learn from shortly. She loves golf and snowboarding, which unfortunately does not have much time for these days, not only because of COVID, but also her beautiful 2-year-old daughter. Jessica, welcome and thank you for being here this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Iván. Iván Anaya. He is a board member of the Leadership Foundation. We're thrilled to have him on board. He is also an alum of LD16, the sweetest class ever, of course, a proud alum. He's the president of Astucia Development and managing principal at WibTech Outdoors. Astucia is an affordable housing and community impact focused development firm, and WibTech Outdoors is a teardrop trailer manufacturing firm. I need to talk to you about that one, Iván, actually. He's a casual but fanatical cyclist, about 6,000 miles on average every year, and I can attest to this. He is hardcore on the bike. I've ridden with him, and I shouldn't even say I've ridden with you, Iván. I ride way, way behind you and see you at the finish line. He's also the proud father of a graying 8-year-old pug named Tachi. I think I said that right. Thank you, Iván, for being here. We certainly appreciate having you and your input. Then we've got Jim Licko. Jim, also a board member of the Leadership Foundation and the vice chair of our Alumni Advisory Council. Jim's co-founder and managing partner of CenterTable, a digital marketing and communications agency in Lodo. He's an early adopter of all things internet and social media. His job really is to find new, interesting, and unique ways for his clients to connect with their various audiences via digital channels. So he, of course, is incredibly important right now. You always are, Jim, but this is certainly a time where you are being innovative and shining. When he's not at work or quarantined, of course, you can find him on the mountains snowboarding or hiking a variety of trails. And he will tell you he's the proud member of the best class ever, Leadership Denver 2009. Welcome, Jim. Thank you for being here. Appreciate you. Finally, we've got Andrew Schmidt, also a very proud LD15 alum. There's 3 of us on here. Clearly, I shouldn't play favorites, but I'm also an LD15 alum, so I'm happy to have 2 speakers from the class. Andrew's the founding partner and visionary for Core Contractors Roofing Systems. He's the board chair for the Other Side Academy Denver, which is an organization he brought to Denver from San Diego while on a Lex trip, and we're proud of you for doing that, Andrew. He's also a board member of the Leadership Foundation, which we're thrilled to have him on board. He and his wife, Mackenzie, have just barely managed to keep 2 children alive over the last few years, and especially lately. And they've had to remind each other to shower. So I'm glad you guys are doing that. You smell beautiful. I'm glad she reminded you this morning, Andrew.
This is the cleanest I've been in weeks.
Well, we appreciate you. He also wants to encourage all of you on the call to reach out to your extroverted friends because they're in trouble right now. And I feel you. We are in trouble with all this stay-at-home stuff. So thank you to all of our speakers. We are so thrilled to have you guys on with us this morning. I'm going to start with you, Jessica, and ask you a question. And I will remind the audience, if you have questions for any of our speakers, please put them in the chat box. First up will be Jessica. If you end up having a specific question for her, we'll take one in between. Otherwise, we'll move on to the next speaker for the next question. But this is meant to be a dialogue, so please do insert your questions whenever you have a chance. I really appreciate it. Okay, Jessica, talk to us. How has COVID-19 affected your business specifically, and how are you adjusting to your type of leadership? Every day is changing, and you work with state, federal, and local clients. So how has this affected your business, and what are you doing to lead through this change?
Well, I think as most of us, it's been affected in the revenues first and foremost. And although we're not in an industry where it was completely shut down as others, like, you know, it's the restaurant and hotels, but it definitely has had an impact. There's projects that have been on hold, other ones that have gone away because they reallocated budgets, as well as some of the projects just have gone away. So that's the major impact. As far as my leadership with my team, my style hasn't necessarily changed. It's the strategy that has changed. We were in this growth path of just growing our business, and we have had to quickly change. So as a leader, I have to be pragmatic, and my responsibility and what I've been doing with my team is just keeping them motivated and inspired, while also giving them a true reality check of what the situation is, so that they don't have unfunded expectations of what is going to be going forward. But also, as a leader, I've been having to one, adapt to the existing situation, but two, pivot and look for other opportunities for our business. And what we're doing is we're getting our team certified in other areas so we can offer additional services so that we can make up for some of the losses.
That's smart. That's a great way to use the time right now, is to open it up. What other areas are you guys getting certified in and looking to, is it expanding the business?
Yeah, so we're going to be adding phase one inspections as well as inspections for asbestos. Right now, our focus had been primarily in water quality compliance, and so we are expanding to other areas while it's still um, in the environmental scope, but we're adding more services.
That's smart. Good for you. And I think, Sarah, I see your question on the side. This may be a good time to ask that question out loud if you would like, and others can respond to it as well when it's their turn to speak. But Sarah, it's all you.
Trying to find the unmute, and I am joining you from my treadmill. So if you hear some background noise, that's totally what's going on.
Good for you.
My question is just, I'm really interested to hear from you guys on, what you've been doing, but as these restrictions lift, I'm very interested to understand how you guys are projecting forward and thinking about keeping teams safe, but also bringing them back together in safe ways. That's something I know as a small business, Corey and I are really thinking a lot about.
Thank you, Sarah. Jessica, do you want to answer a piece of that?
Sure. I mean, what we are planning to do is obviously keep everybody safe in terms of when we're bringing back people into the office, but also out in the field. Our scope luckily allows for that distancing to be much easier because typically my inspectors in the field are out in the field and they don't necessarily have to interact with the teams there. When they're there, we can perform the inspections and then later send a report and touch bases over the phone or on a web call. So that's what we plan for going forward. It's something that also our clients are on board instead of having more interaction in the field. And as far as the office, again, we're going to be starting to bring people slowly, but luckily because our team in the office is smaller, it allows for everybody to keep their distance.
Yeah, that's great. That's good that you have the ability to do that, Jessica. Thank you. I'm going to move to Jim. Jim, I'd love to ask you, I mean, this has got to be rocking your world in a lot of different ways, but how have you adjusted your daily operations in response to this? And how are you seeing your messaging changing in the PR world in light of COVID? Tell us a little bit more about that, would you?
Yeah. So I made a couple notes and tried to make them something that would be, takeaways from a takeaway standpoint for the people that are on the call. Being in professional services, we've always had a very, work-life sort of blend, and working from home is something that's not foreign to us. So project management software, Slacks, Zoom calls, remote time entry, things like that have always been something that we've always done here at GroundFloor Media and CenterTable. I think the two main things we're focused on is how do we keep people employed, keep everyone employed, and how do we keep everybody's mental health in check, basically, with everything that's going on. I think we've done some cost-cutting measures as far as cutting into our marketing and travel budget. Not going to be doing a lot of travel and things like that. We've put year-end bonuses on pause. We've cut leadership team compensation for the year. So we've done some cost-cutting measures. Andrew and I were talking while the call was getting started that the PPP money is coming through for us and him. So that's a good thing from a standpoint of a stopgap for the next couple of months. We've seen some business go away, like Jessica mentioned, but we've also seen some business come in from an issues management and crisis communication standpoint. We work with a lot of healthcare organizations. We work with a lot of, we've gotten some elder care facilities that have come to us for help in communicating with their audiences and that type of thing through COVID-19. So some business has gone away and some has come in. I think from that mental health standpoint with our employees, we've been doing daily team check-ins, just half hour, anybody who can join, just more of a mental check away from the day-to-day work, get people to see each other's faces, that type of thing. We've contracted with Gigi Johnston, who many of you probably know for years, just on leadership things related to Emergenetics, related to Leadership Circle, and she's available for our employees to check in with as an outside entity. Just to kind of talk through what they may be experiencing with time management or otherwise. Childcare has been a big issue, and I don't know that anybody's really cracked that nut yet as far as what's going on with childcare and how people manage their day-to-day work. We've been joking that I feel like our work picks up at 4 p.m. for some reason, and I don't know if that's like the spouse, it's like the handoff period or something, where the spouse is done with their work and they've done sort of the management of children, but we see the emails go like fly up around 4 p.m. every day for some reason. I think, you know, from a client standpoint, we've been seeing a lot of people pivot in the way that they've been communicating, finding creative ways to use video. We've done a lot of remote video recording. CDHS we work with from their child abuse and neglect awareness hotline, which we launched a campaign in all of this, and a part of that was Child Abuse Prevention Month, which we did a virtual launch for, where we recorded all of our videos via Zoom and some other software. So we were able to pull together marketing communications videos via those channels. The other thing that we've seen is just live video and even live to tape, live video that then is recorded and repurposed or is made available like we're doing now, the engagement's been through the roof. I mean, like 5, 6, 7x, because people have time at home. They don't have these other outside forces where they have to be somewhere or that type of thing. So from a standpoint of marketing and communications, if you have the ability to have thought leaders or people within your industry who can go live and speak to things, I think people want to see people's eyes. They want to look them in the face. They want to know what's going in real time, and it's not something that was recorded pre-COVID or 3 weeks ago or whatever. They want to know it's real and it's live and this is what's happening. You know, they want to hear the baby crying in the background. They want to hear the dog barking. That makes it more real for people. So that's all been the things that we've seen. From Sarah's question, what we're doing to prepare for some of the restrictions to life. We've very preliminary conversations, but we just moved back into a new footprint for our office a year ago, January. And we're talking about scheduling and communicating who's going to be in the office and when, starting in May, hopefully. And then B, what does the footprint of the office look like? So we're managing social distancing within the office. We'll have to move some desks and change the footprint of our office a little bit to do so. We do have some people that are going to be a little bit more essential to be working from the office. Our video team requires some software and some computers that are way easier to work from the office. But we're having those discussions right now of you know, we've got 23 full-time employees, and I think we're probably set for 12 to 13 at the office, depending on social distancing purposes. So those are all things we're looking at right now.
That's helpful to hear. I'm curious, Jim, with the messaging that you're doing with your clients, I mean, we're kind of at that cusp of, it's been COVID 24/7 for this last month and a half or so. Are you starting to see a shift in what people want to message out? And is there a vision of getting back to just our regular types of messaging? And as you answer that, please, if you have questions, please put them in the chat box and we'll make sure Jim has a chance to answer. But Jim, talking about messaging.
Our thing the whole time has been, that's a tricky tightrope, right? I mean, I think we all inherently want to get back to normal, whatever that looks like now. And so we want to be marketing like, let's get out, let's get people back out to the restaurants or buying products or, you know, out and able to do their work and things like that. But at the same time, we need to be sensitive to the people who can't go back to work, the people who are immunocompromised, who have to stay at home and will be for the foreseeable future. So for a lot of our clients, you know, I think the conversation is starting to shift now to what does it look like after COVID and what are we going to be communicating? But we're going to need to be very careful what that looks like. A lot of what we're trying to influence some of our clients on the consumer side is how do we come up with new and innovative ways to get their product to market, not necessarily marketing it, because then that'll dictate how we market the product or service, but how do we change based on what's going on and what we know is going to be at least the normal for the next few months, so that we can get products to market in unique and new ways that make people feel comfortable buying that product or attending that event or getting out and getting back to their life in some way.
Thank you, Jim. I appreciate that. Iván, let's move to you. Your work is fascinating in that you do work around development, community development and housing, and bridging technology with innovation. So talk to me about what your response to COVID has looked like with your company, and what's been one of your greatest leadership challenges and how to balance all of this? And what are you doing to overcome this?
Yeah, so from the Astucia development standpoint, it's been a little bit tricky. I mean, a lot of our work, especially for projects that are under construction, we've got to do site walks, and so I've had now a couple of projects where I did a punch list by video, where I was the only person on site and literally walking and doing FaceTime with the contractor and putting tape on all of the things that I needed to have done. And then, constant communication on that punch list. And when they're there, I'm not. And when I'm there, they're not. And so that has slowed some things down. I think that, but again, using video, fortunately, we live in this time and age. 1918, that was a different era. And, I'm just very grateful that I live in this time and age. We've done limited site walks. I've got one acquisition deal, where the own property for over 50 years. And, we've been talking a lot about how to honor the fact that her family had been in the neighborhood for over 50 years and maybe naming a garden after her, something like that. She is in her 90s. And so with the acquisition, we were going to be moving a nonprofit onto her property right after that happened. Well, that has changed the deal quite a bit, because she's not going to be moving to an apartment community with other senior citizens, and so we've had to change our approach on that. Not necessarily kill the deal, because her family's relying on this deal happening, and so the nonprofit that I'm working with is relying on this deal happening, and so we've just had to shift a couple of in many directions, but I think that things are happening in a very positive way. And so I'm really grateful for that. The other thing that we're really trying to change our approach on is the way we communicate with cities and fire departments for permitting purposes. Most cities do not have people working, especially on the, from a development and planning standpoint, they're not working in the office. So that's a pretty tough scenario where you've got deadlines to meet, you've got cash flow that is burning up with interest and things like that need to be paid. And, those deals have a run rate. And so making sure that the communication lines are open, that you are anticipating questions ahead of time, so that you don't get caught up on 2 and 3 rounds of revisions from the city, that type of thing. That's been pretty challenging, but at the end of the day, again, it's improved our communication skills. It's improved, the teamwork with the nonprofits I work with, Littleton Housing Authority, so many different things. From a whip tech standpoint, this is a startup. We're manufacturing teardrop campers, and at the end of the day, for the last year that we've been in operations, my mantra has been go slow to go fast, find your voice. It's not about, me as managing principal setting the voice for the company. It's about the team finding the voice. And at the end of the day, it's as much a camper company as it is a lifestyle company. And that's really important to us. It's kind of caught us flat-footed because our website's not ready. Our messaging is not ready. I'm terrible at Instagram, so therefore I'm having to hire that out. And there are multiple things that we're having to change there. Again, and at the same time, though, we're doing this with a lot of compassion, a lot of understanding that folks, who have made an order, who have, set a rental for April or May, that we can reimburse them, fully reimburse them and things like that. And I think it's causing me as an individual to shift some assets around so that I can put more money into that company. I believe in the company. I'm nervous about it, but at the end of the day, I know it's going to work out. I know that Colorado loves to be outdoors, and we're the right company for Colorado. So I'm excited about it, but also, I'm fearful of what's coming. Especially if things continue to, if we, and rightfully so, if we have to stay home until September, October, that's the camping season. And so that's really going to be difficult for our revenues. On the flip side, sales have gone crazy.
I'm sure.
So that's helpful, but we're also having to invest money and take a little bit of risk on building more campers, and that it's not cheap to build a camper, and so we're risking some money and hoping that sales, when we deliver, we get paid, and so that's been tough. Greatest leadership challenge, honestly, for me has just been keeping deadlines and balancing compassion with expectation. And I think at the end of the day, I mean, that has been the hardest thing for me. I'm in many ways an introvert. I'm very analytical, and I forget about emotions. I forget about the type of anxiety that I can cause if I'm pushing a deadline, especially in this time. And so learning to balance compassion with expectation has been incredibly difficult for me. But at the same time, it's kind of liberating to know that I've got more of a heart than I thought I did as a business person.
Well, Iván, that's big to recognize that about you too, though. I mean, I think that's what leaders need to do in these times, is figure out where their strengths are, but also being open to that balance. I mean, on our last virtual voice last week, we learned a lot about the importance of, you said compassion and expectation, but also the reality versus being optimistic, and how do we express that to our teams to keep things moving, but also to understand the emotional state that everybody's in a different place. So kudos to you for recognizing that. I do know a good PR firm. They happen to be on the call, Corey and Sarah. If you need help with your messaging and PR, they're spectacular. Jim Licko.
Thanks for the shout out.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Licko's got all the internet stuff for you, but
yeah, exactly. Thank you.
If anybody has a question for Iván, please do type that in there. Iván, I was hoping you could expand a little bit on the permitting side of things when you're working with the state. I know that's been kind of an issue for a lot of people in their industries. How is that changed? Like, are there specifics you can give us on what that looks like now? And I'm hoping that this also means, as you said, you're doing better in communication. So this will likely carry over after all of this is gone, and really helping to firm up and clarify what communication needs to look like, and maybe be a good thing in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I'd say there is the importance of relationships. I've been in Denver for most of my life, and have built a lot of relationships in this city and in Littleton and other cities that I'm working in. And having those relationships is incredibly important at this time. Having those bridges that have been built over time is incredibly important, because if I need to reach out ahead of time and say, hey, look, here's what we're coming in with, here are a couple of questions that we're not sure about how you want to handle, X component of the development. Can you just help me understand, what direction you think we're going to need to take here? And getting ahead of those things is really important. And as I said earlier, anticipating questions way ahead of time, as far ahead as you possibly can, and doing something about those is incredibly important. In the past, you had time, you had the luxury of time, especially with development, where, oh, I know that's coming, it's down the line, I've got downstream implications, I know that, but at this point, it's like I need to make the best decision possible, because those downstream implications could really be terrible if I'm not careful about what we submit to the city, or what we submit to it's mostly cities that we're dealing with right now, but or fire departments. In Littleton, for example, there's the city that I've got a set of code requirements, and then they've got a fire department's completely separate that they work with. And so that's also been a bit of a challenge in making sure that they are on the same page and communicating. So I hope I answered your question. I feel like I rambled quite a bit.
No, I think that's good. I think for me, it was just interesting to think about how many people within your industry you have to do. It's a domino effect, right? It's not just you getting your job done. It's waiting on others who are waiting on others who are figuring things out also. So I think that enlightens us. So thank you, Iván. I appreciate that. Yeah,
the other thing I would say that we're doing to anticipate some of these things is, for example, HVAC. In the past, if a rooftop unit, heating and cooling systems, a rooftop unit, if a contractor told me it's ordered, then I would say, okay, great. When's the delivery date? Nowadays, it's ordered. Okay, show me the order,
Right.
and show me the correspondence that it's coming in on this date. Why? Because I've got 5 other trades that I need to schedule, or that I need to make sure you're scheduling, and things are happening on time. And that's where the keeping deadlines and balancing compassion with expectations is tough for me, because I'm analytical and I need to see it in person. And so I'm asking for proof of things being ordered now versus how it's been in the past.
Mm-hmm. Well, hopefully you're getting the proof you need then also.
In some cases, yes. In some cases, no.
Yeah. All right. Again, please remember you can put questions there in the chat box. I'm going to move on to my fellow extrovert, Andrew Schmidt here. You know, Andrew is in the roofing industry. I think that's also considered construction, right? So it's an essential business. Tell us how you're working with your team, Andrew, because you've got folks in the office. You've also got folks out in the field, much like Jessica was mentioning. But how are you leading them through these uncertain times? How do you simply how do you manage that? Because it's a different message, I assume, for both sets of team members.
You know, it's a good question, and a couple of us were talking offline before this started, and I think the biggest takeaway that I've had in the last 6 weeks was how impressive the team responded to such sort of a critical and complicated pivot for business. And so I think it's healthy to point out, though, that the messaging has been very similar for both our in-field workers, which as an essential business, we're able to maintain a lot of our production outside, where they're able to be socially distanced. I mean, it was a whirlwind to source the PPE when we first got going, because all of a sudden our office workers, sort of easily transitioned to home. I was joking that I had no idea that I had a video hangout feature in every Gmail invite I've sent for the last 10 years. And so the company responded really well. And sourcing the PPE was actually one of our greatest challenges, because we didn't have a ton of masks, and we didn't have a ton of hand sanitizer, and we didn't have a lot of these things. So our core cares team did a really great job of rallying around that. We had, like chemist labs popping up in kitchens, and people were making their own hand sanitizer and hand sanitizer.
As long as that's all they were making, Andrew.
Revenues are up. No. And so it's just been a huge team effort. And I think that the messaging, it was really important for the messaging to stay the same for both workers in the field and the workers here, which really revolve around sort of how we're showing up as people towards one another and towards our clients, and really activating what's been built in our culture in terms of the mandate I feel as a business owner is to develop our people. And a mentor of mine many years ago said that, that in crisis is when you show up for your people. And I think that has been one of the neatest things for me to learn as we are sort of making decisions on the fly. We're not cascading sort of blind optimism, but we're communicating more frequently than you feel is necessary. We're asking more questions about, to Jim's point, the mental health that everyone's experiencing, or the mental health crisis that could really proliferate in something like this. And so really creating space and making space for those connections to happen, and to validate the tumble and the rise and fall of emotion that different people are experiencing on different days. I know I've gone through all the stages of grief and, denial and bargaining and, acceptance. And, I feel like I was just depressed last week. And so I took that opportunity to share that with the whole team and be like, hey, this is scary, and there's a lot of unknown, but here's what we can control. Here's how we can respond to this, and be mindful of what's happening. And so it's really sort of, it's reinforced for me the importance of understanding like a healthy culture and how belief informs behavior, and how you manage that behavior so that when crisis hits, that everybody kind of goes to battle stations, because the mission is clear, which is that we take care of each other first. And then we make the most or make the best decisions that we can on a daily basis with the information that we have, with safety sort of at top of mind. And then we do the best to navigate sort of a world that's changing on a daily basis. And so that's kind of what's been going on.
And that's got to be hard, Andrew, with, you know, you have a business you have to keep afloat also, right? And knowing that, of course, safety is always going to be the number one, but when you reach that threshold that's maybe right about now, where this safer at home lift is about to happen and the stay at home is going to lift, and this, you know, how do you then transition? Kind of what Sarah was asking earlier is, how do you transition into restrictions, you know, making money, but keeping everybody safe as well?
Yeah, you know, it'll be interesting. You know, we have, our work has been able to maintain in the field. I say largely unaffected. Our intake of revenue is down 70 to 80% from previous years. So we're seeing a huge downturn, whereas a lot of people, unless it's an emergency roof issue, a lot of people are like, let's just kind of hang tight, and are taking sort of a slower approach to it. So we have real pressures on us, and we've been pretty transparent with the company. It helps to have a CFO that's very fiscally responsible as a business partner. So he's been enforcing and working on us to build our reserves for the last, you know, who knows how many years. And so that has afforded us definitely a position of comfort to say, hey, we've got reserves that are quickly disappearing. But we're okay. We haven't had to lay anyone off. Or make any sort of cost-cutting measures as of yet, but we feel like we're going to roll with it as it comes. We have about 40 employees, and 20 of those employees are generally in the field most of the time, and so the other 20 that are in the office a lot. You know, we are having. I never would have thought I would have been such a fan of working from home for a lot of our different positions. I think over time there's a disconnection can happen. And I think that part of the magic of the collisions of the workplace is something that we all probably miss more than we thought we enjoyed. We casually talk about that we have a culture of interruption here. And boy, I miss interrupting people. I miss interrupting meetings. I miss being interrupted. I miss Kramer popping my head in and not having anything really valid to say, or just make a face at somebody through, you probably wonder what the hell I do. It's mostly that.
I think now we know.
Yeah, now you know. So I've been going crazy. But I think as we evolve back into whatever this new normal is, because, you know, when hail starts falling, people need roofs, and people need to protect their homes. And so, but I imagine that we've already had conversations around rolling out different options for working 2 days a week to keep their numbers in the office down. We're seeing surprising efficiency at people's jobs. I've probably been the most efficient I've ever been in the last 5 weeks. I've also been probably the most miserable because my bucket is filled when I interact with other people.
Right.
And so we got to find that balance back. But I think that, you know, recognizing there's been some incredible lessons, you know, never let a good crisis go to waste. It's like, boy, be present. What are we learning? How are we learning we can do things differently? And how do we stay transparent with everyone and say, hey, you know, this is what it looks like right now, and everybody's okay. We're okay. This is crazy. Let's acknowledge it. And let's work together and recognize that this is why we create culture in companies, is so that our people can lean on one another and support each other and make them meals and check in, and different things like that. So it's been a very hard time, but it's also, you can't not take advantage of what is happening and what it's teaching you.
Andrew, it's such a treat to hear that. I mean, you really exemplify our Colorado civic DNA, and thinking through that. I love what you say. This is why we have cultures, right? So that we can get through things like this. I want to open up the floor to Tom Brenninger. Has a question that you've kind of just answered, but Tom, it may be for him or maybe for all the speakers, but please take the floor.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, we're just kind of, you know, struggling because with everybody being, you know, remote, and we're really a professional services organization, you know, no communication doesn't seem like a very good strategy. And that's kind of just because of the paralysis of it all. That's kind of so far where we've been is not being highly communicative, because we're not sure what to communicate, you know. We're a little bit concerned that we don't want to tell people everything's okay, because it's not okay. But we're trying to, there's so many things to navigate. I mean, you talked about the PPP loans, you know, things like that. So I'm just curious, you know, if people have thoughts on communication strategies that help people, but also give them kind of the reality of the situation.
Yeah, I would, I don't know if that was phrased to me, but I'll take a stab at it. I think that, boy, I have found a lot of relief in just sort of acknowledging that I don't know how this is going to shake out. I think that you're hitting on a very, very key thing that I think a lot of us felt at the very beginning of these stages, which was, I don't know what to say. It was hard enough for us to just decide to go virtual. We're like, oh my gosh, well, how do we communicate this? What do we say? How are we cascading this message? And I think what we fell into was saying, you know, we actually videotaped I videotaped my business partner, who's our president, and just kind of talking about our financial position to the whole company. We said, hey, this is what we have. These are our reserves. These are how many months we have that we can sort of keep everybody clear and focused, and we're going to respond to this on a daily basis. And, you know, it's kind of like I said, not the blind optimism, but it's sort of just the transparency of saying, this is what the reality is. And, you know, with your leadership team, we're wargaming out month by month. We're like, hey, okay, this is what our world looks like in 30, 60, and 90 days. But in the meantime, to the entire company, we can say, hey, this is what we know. We're doing the best we can. And finding opportunity to over communicate instead of pull back. If you're not sure what to say, it's okay to just have a meeting that says, hey, we're just not sure how this is going to work out, and this is what our plan is for the next couple months. And so leaning into that when the inclination is to pull back from it, I think is worth considering.
Yeah, and have you had folks as a result of that become more empowered, and they feel like, I mean, you're getting more out of them, or they're more committed to you as a result of that communication?
Absolutely, because I think we're touching a light inside of people that says, we care about you, and if you need help, we're here. You know, we had a number of employees whose spouses lost their jobs. Right now, it's not just that, hey, we're still paying our people, but we actually had a bunch of employees that were whose you know, half of their income disappeared. Their wife or their husband worked at a restaurant or different things like that. And, you know, it's being able to quickly think and pivot and say, hey, you know, we may not be doing it the right way, but, you know, I heard in a meeting the other day that companies had offered a zero interest loan to their employees and deferred payments for 6 months. So I was just like, let's do that. You know, so we just put it out there and said, hey, if any of your spouses lost their job, set a time with us. You know, we'll look at a loan on a case-by-case basis on what you need, and we'll do that loan now. We'll do a 6-month deferment, and, you know, and then we'll just kind of circle from there. But we recognize that a lot of people need cash now. And so it's pressing into that. And if you feel like there's something that you can do to touch those people in that way, then you're going to see higher productivity. You're going to see increased culture. You're going to see more efficiency, better communication, and you're going to see your systems and your processes improve, which is what we've mainly been focused on as a company working from home.
Well, great question, Tom, and thank you for that feedback.
Thanks, Tom.
And maybe somebody else, one of our other speakers, wants to answer that. In addition to Sarah, had a follow-up question as well. Sarah, do you want to ask that? And maybe we'll get some of the other speakers engaged in this answer as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it dovetails nicely into this discussion about communication. I think Andrew had such a great point about vulnerability and, you know, this is an unknown time. It's unprecedented, you know, all the best laid plans. I don't think anyone really had a map for this sort of situation. And really, you know, those examples of vulnerability, I think can help guide us all as we're trying to do that with our own staffs and clients and other stakeholders. And so I'd love to hear from the other panelists how you've been, you know, balancing vulnerability with strength in this moment as you're communicating with people.
Jessica, let's start with you.
I think for both Tom and Sarah, first of all, one thing that has helped for us has been daily check-ins to keep kind of like the team together, and even if it's just for 5 minutes or you know, whatever long it takes, but we do daily check-ins to try to gauge kind of what the mindset of the team is. Like Andrew was saying, you know, there's times where you feel more motivated and more hopeful, and then there's other times where you're just depressed. And so based on that is kind of like the lead that I take in trying to keep the team more motivated, but also, like Andrew mentioned, just keeping them appraised of what their reality is, and it will be. The other thing that we've been able to share with the team, kind of what Sarah was inquiring about, is just first of all, the resources that we've been able to find that will apply for our company. And one other thing is I feel like I've acquired a new full-time job just in doing so, just trying to find the resources and applying for all these loans and stuff like that. But I've also been in this cause I've been relying on my team to step up and take on some of the work so that we can focus on those, but keeping them appraised of what the progress is, what loans have we applied for, have they been approved, and just that transparency, letting them know where we are as far as you know, whether it's cash reserves or you know, kind of not keeping them in the dark of where their job will be. So, you know, just letting them know, yes, we can carry you through until this point, but if we get this loan, it'll extend it to this, or stuff like that. So I think that people really appreciate that instead of just being kept in the dark. But definitely, like, the lines of communications open and that daily check-in really helps.
That's great, Mike. Transparency is certainly the key here. Iván, did you have an answer to the vulnerability and really showing that, especially with your style of leadership?
Yeah. So, you know, for me, I'm very much Leadership Denver actually comes to mind. It's doubling down on your strengths and supporting your weaknesses, right? And my weakness, one of my biggest weaknesses, is vulnerability. And so I've actually had one expense go up quite a bit during this time, and that expense is both my business coach and my psychologist. Making sure that I'm talking through the items that I'm struggling with most and digging deep, so that at the end of the day, you know, if I'm centered, I can help others find their center as well. And sometimes helping them find their center is, you know, saying, hey, you need some, maybe some mental health services as well. And so figuring out how we pay for that, figuring out how you know, finding a meditation service, new journal, whatever it might be, has been, I think, something that not only has been helpful, but actually has brought me closer to a few people that I work with. And it's not a public conversation, it's a private conversation with each of them. And maybe they're having it with each other, and they're talking about all the funny things that I've got going on. But at the end of the day, you know, I'm really respecting those conversations, and I'm very appreciative of those conversations.
And that's true authenticity, Iván. Thank you for sharing that and giving us a little insight into where your expenses are, and for good reason. Jim, do you want to add to this?
Yeah, just quickly. I mean, we deal a lot with crisis communication, that type of thing. And I think too, just very sort of block and tackle things that we talk about. To Tom's question, there's so much unknown. We always coach our clients, what can we focus on that's the known? What are the data points right now? What do we know? because that will help, you know, determine what that path forward and what that transparency looks like. And then I think the building on that, the second part is how can we be decisive in that decision-making process? Because employees will respect a decisive process that gets to the point where they understand what the levers are that are you know, causing decisions to be made. So focus on what you can, what you know, and then make decisions based on that pretty swiftly, knowing that, you know, you can change course if you need to, but we're all living in the same world where the data, the goalposts are shifting, you know, daily, it seems like. And so to at least make decisions and base them on the data that you have right now, rather than it's so easy to sit there and swallow and you know, the unknown and just think about all these, you know, concepts that are out there that you know, Iván and Andrew have been kind of talking about. So yeah, focus on what you know and make a decision.
Tremendous advice from all of you. I think small business or not, these are things that we can all take back to our offices and in even our homes, and really take that into account. With the 5 minutes we have left, I would love to ask each of our speakers to just give some feedback to us as the alumni network here on this call. What can we do as a leadership network, as your community, to help small businesses, whether it's your business specifically, other than, of course, becoming a client? What can we do to help the small business industry right now? And let's start with Jessica, and then we'll go to Iván, then Jim, then Andrew.
I was gonna say, let's start with Andrew, but I haven't given it a thought yet. But if somebody else wants to go, well, I think about this.
She called on you, Andrew. Let's start with you.
Now you just messed up my order. I was going to go last. No, I think that it's a lot of the messaging that everyone is hearing, I think is poignant and relevant. And that is, you know, support the people, you know, right? Support the small businesses in your area, you know, support the restaurants. I think we all have friends that have lost their jobs. We all have in places that we have loved to go for years that are really struggling. And you know, I'm in a fortunate position now where I can support them and, you know, tip heavily and reach out to the people that you know and offer them help. And if you're not sure who to help, you know, support the Mile High United Way COVID Relief Fund and give into that because those dollars are making their way to help people now. And so I think check on your friends. I will say that I have had more video chats are way better than phone chats. Who knew? And so reach out to people, check on them, do FaceTimes, reconnect with parents, you know, things that you can do to help your own mental health and how you can cascade that and infect other people with kindness and cheer and love and, you know, those joy. And these are the things that we want to be thinking on. So I would say be a beacon of that, be a bastion for, you know, these types of things for those people around you. And you will find that your own spirits will be lifted as you activate and lift your head and focus on serving the people around you. So I would say all of those things.
That's fantastic. Jim, you want to go?
Sure. I you know, a lot of people have been saying support local business, and I couldn't agree with that more, but I would challenge you to go literally out of your way to support local business. It's very easy to say, I'm just going to put in this Amazon order, or I'm just going to go get Drizzly delivered or whatever. Go out of your way. In my case, it's walking a block and a half to Diebold Brewing to pick up my beer there instead of, you know, having it delivered from a big box retailer or something. You know, there's restaurants like Atomo down by Snooze in the Ballpark neighborhood that are doing wine deliveries and lasagna deliveries, and like send those to friends. Find somebody you know who's immunocompromised and send them a lasagna and 3 bottles of wine. You know, like get out of your way.
3 bottles, I like that.
Yeah, well, you know, it's
one night, right?
But just go out of your way. You know, if it's something where you normally order from Amazon, maybe go to the market down the street and pick up some dish soap from there or something. Because if you don't make it, you know, a point, it's not going to happen. And then go tell your friends about it too. Tell your friends about your experience. Hey, I went around the corner and I picked up wine from Atomo. It was great. They delivered it right to my doorstep or something. So, just go out of your way and don't just pay it lip service, but actually whenever you make a purchase, think about, can I buy local?
That's great. That adds on to that. Iván, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think first I'm going to take your job for a second, Elizabeth. I think Laura Smedley said something that I really appreciate, which is share information and participate in social media conversations with small businesses. They need as much virtual support and exposure as possible right now. And, you know, I mentioned I'm terrible at Instagram. I'm terrible at a lot of the more marketing functions, that type of thing. And that's probably one of the things I struggle with most. And so I do appreciate that comment a lot. And you know, I would just echo what Andrew said. I didn't like hearing it this way, but yesterday I was in a conversation where a friend of mine said, you know, I'm supporting a lot of people that were honestly invisible to me before. And so my mother owns a housekeeping business, and he mentioned his cleaner. I was just kind of like, oh, that's my mom. And so, you know, but it's true. It's really true. And hopefully they weren't invisible to you, but if they were, that's okay. Just don't let them become invisible again after this time. But if you're not having them come to your house for their safety and yours, or their health and yours, to clean, things like that. You know, my hair is super long right now. And I was just thinking last night, as I was considering the fact that I have to comb my hair for the first time in 3 weeks, that Caitlin, the woman who has always made sure I'm very well groomed, has had no revenue for over a month. And so I'm going to continue to pay her on a monthly basis like I would if she were cutting my hair. And I think I'm going to do a little more than that, but same with cleaners, you know, that type of thing. I think that's one of the most important things we can do, is continue to support the people who provided you, you know, what now feels like very essential services, but you may not have realized were essential in the past.
I mean, the hearts are huge right now. I love hearing this. Jessica, I want to give you space to give your response, and then we'll wrap up this meeting. Jessica?
Yeah, I definitely second that, especially the daycare people.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the huge businesses that have had several, you know, it gives them more impactful difference in people's lives. But one of the things that I've been doing is keeping in touch with other small business owners and just sharing resources. So, for example, a friend of mine is in the food and beverage industry, and I just been communicating with her, making sure that she's doing okay. You know, asking how can I help, and then just sharing any of the resources that come my way. And we've had a couple of groups of small business owners just talking back and forth and sharing resources that way. So that's one thing that really has helped. And I've helped them come up with some strategies or thinking out of the box on what are some of the things that they can do while this thing is going on. For my friend that has a restaurant, and then another friend that has a couple of bars, just thinking out of the box. So my friend that has the bar, he's actually been delivering alcohol to keep his business going, and you know, that's not generating the same revenue that it did before, but it says these allow him to keep his employees.
That's great. I think that really goes in line with, Jim, what you said too, is we can all go out of our way to help others. And I think we are so fortunate that we are the Leadership Foundation Alumni Network, and this is how we think. I think this is default how everybody on this phone call thinks, and so it's such a treat to hear all the perspectives from our small business owners. There are many of you on this call as well, and you know, we have resources right under the chamber house as well, the chamber roof. The SBDC has been doing a tremendous amount of work to help small businesses. So if any of our speakers or other small business owners need additional resources, they are there and happy to help. I want to thank our speakers, Jessica, Iván, Andrew, and Jim. It's a real treat having you on and sharing your vulnerabilities, your insights, your knowledge, and how you're leading through this. It's really been tremendous. Again, we'll have this recorded and on our website that you can find it there if you want to refer back to it. We will also have, you can look at future virtual voices, both on our website and on the network. We do have one coming up on Thursday with Kelly Bruff, who will be talking about the chamber and business perspectives. And then next week we have one focused on education with the head of Colorado Succeeds, Scott LeBand, also Rich Martinez, the head of Young Americans Bank, as well as Dr. Janine Davidson, the head of MSU. So we've got an amazing lineup. We will be hosting these weekly, and we hope to see you back. Thank you all for giving us an additional 3 minutes of your time. We appreciate you and hope to see you soon. Thanks so much, everyone.